I made it to the next house um, in Chennai. I feel like even when I was traveling in Europe last year, I still remember that one day where it just like hit me super hard. I was like, dude, what am I doing? And I was actually just thinking about it today. I was like, when was the last time I had that moment where I just like looked at myself and I was like, why am I doing this? I remember I was sitting in my tent and there was a thunderstorm and it was raining like crazy. And I saw like couples huge spiders like outside of my tent, like in my tent, and like there was like my that one species that I always used to see um, everywhere, right? And I was just sitting there. I was like, dude, why am I doing this? Like, why did I? I'm not even forced to do this. I'm choosing to do this, and that's kind of the question I wanted to explore today. Of like sometimes adventures and experiences are just not comfortable and are not pleasant, but they like shape you and mold you in like this very weirdly profound way. Like I think back to it, I was like, dude, I was in a tent for 6 weeks. Are you kidding me? Like really? That's crazy. That's wild to me. I can't believe I did that. Was it worth it? The idea that something is worth it based on like what I feel about it today, I think is the wrong way to look at something. Like whether an action is worth it in the past based on how I think about it today doesn't seem fair because then it like hyper values like whatever I feel about the past today. So what if while I'm doing something super worth it and then 10 years later I'm like it wasn't worth it? Like does that not take away from like the fact that the version of you at that point thought it was worth it? Like do I have any like I think there was a point in my life where like I did things to like learn and like the value of something was based on how much I learned from it. But the reason I realized that no longer is true for me is I remember when I was in Europe, for example, I had my journal and I'd get everyone I met to sign. There's this concept of like, oh, I want to like capture all of these so that I can, whatever, show people that I met all these people, or I can look back and remember the people I met and like what I learned from them. And the whole like Europe trip was like very driven on like, what can I learn? But what that ends up doing is it converts every human, every interaction, you objectify it to extract some value from it. And that value is what you learn. And so I look back to all those signatures I got, and I was like, I objectified these people. I may have had a really beautiful moment with this person, and I said, yo, at the end, I was like, can you sign this? I convert. The problem with that is during that conversation, at some point, the idea of like, oh, get this person's signature came up. It wasn't like natural at the end, like, oh my God, I really want to remember you. It was at a certain point in the conversation that thought, hey, get their signature came on in my brain. And so then the rest of the conversation felt kind of like usatory. Is that a word? Usatory? Let me Google that. That'd be crazy if usatory is a word. Let's see. If it is, that's lit. No, usatory. Word or feels like you are using. Yeah, you can say manipulated. Sure. Feels like you're manipulating the situation. Um, and so this time around, and I feel like especially that camping situation, like, did I get some sort of like lessons? Like, of course, but did I do it for the lessons? Like, no. I just did at some point to be like, let me just make my life a little more interesting and like have a challenge to get through on a day-to-day basis. And like, it made my life fun. It made my life difficult. I woke up every morning with a challenge to beat, and it wasn't something where it was just like so easy. And so for those 6 weeks, life was slightly more worth living. But do I know for a fact that it was more worthwhile than if I had not done that, did something else? And I don't know that. And so at what point does all of this become kind of silly? It really just depends on what the end goal is. If the goal is to have like a whole bunch of stories and an accumulation of these experiences, then this is a great choice. But I think to dedicate your life to experiencing things, you have to keep putting yourself in situations that's just like, why? Like you just have to you have to be scared, you have to be frightened, like you have to, it's not that you have to be controlled by your fears, but you're gonna be scared. Like it's, okay, like, okay, I did India. If I do India, then I have to up it. Next trip, where am I gonna go? Like, yeah, you could Ethiopia, kick it with Ebenezer, like, you could, like, what would be the next level? Ayahuasca in Brazil, like, it's like, where does it end if the goal is to experience life? So then what's the other option? So maybe the point of this stuff is to experience like the entire gamut of like emotions instead of like things, emotions. But wouldn't that mean like having like children, like that? Those are all also things that lead to emotions that you'd never experience otherwise. It's just I'm very uncomfortable right now. It's easy when you like justify it all as like I'm doing this because it's gonna help me with my career and it's gonna help me. I can prove that it's gonna help me with my career and then my career means this and then I'm gonna get this much money. It all makes sense. Like life is easily planned out when you have like a to B to C to D to E and everything you do just aligns to that. But when you don't really have like a clear North Star, let's say it's learning, like let's say it's a more broad, like I want, when you say I want to make a lot of money, there's a clear, like, okay, you can literally quantify how well you did. When you say I want to lead a good life, or when you say you want to like learn, it's not quantifiable. Um, like, what do you learn? What is useful? Is knowledge supposed to be useful? Um, and so I'm just thinking about like, what is the point of all of this? And honestly, it's been a very reflective week. And this is a huge privilege, like to not be have to work and like stress about that stuff and kind of just bum it for 7 months. And I don't know, it's a beautiful privilege that I'm really appreciating. But I feel like even being here, I have so much I need to figure out. The food situation, the water situation, my money situation, this charging battery situation, buying train ticket situation. I don't really have like a money plan here. I pretty much don't have much figured out. And I'm definitely kind of scared. What am I scared of? I'm scared of being uncomfortable. I'm not scared of dying, as I'm not gonna die, but I'm just very afraid of being uncomfortable. But why, right? I think that's the question. You kind of believe that there's like a level that you're willing to go to and you're not willing to go under that. And that like belief that, oh, I'm not willing to change what I'm comfortable with is what leads to every other issue. If you're just like, all right, well, worst case, if I, like, so I guess identifying the things that you're not okay with is important. So like, and there's two different things. Let's say it's like an interpersonal thing. I'm not okay with people, well, whatever, you can say anything like calling me some word. That's fine because you could just be like, okay, well, this person does it. I don't want that in my life. But let's say it's something like, I don't want, maybe it's the same thing. I was going to say, like, for example, one thing I'm afraid of is like using a hella nasty toilet. Um, I feel like I've always just had a thing against that. But when I was in Lightning in a Bottle, it was hard the first day, I remember, but then by day 2 or 3, you just get used to it, right? I remember like that feeling of freedom that came once I was like, okay, well now I know how to use this and now I just do it. I know how to feel clean in this dirty environment. And so it's like what I'm afraid of is like taking on these buses or trains and then I'm like, oh, what if I have to use the restroom? I'm gonna have to use a nasty ass restroom. And I'm like, I can't do that. And so I'm like limiting myself from what I experience. I'm not really even leaving the house because I'm like, okay, I don't really know what the world's gonna throw at me. But I'm trying to slowly, inch into it. Um, and be afraid if I'm gonna leave the house and walk alone for the first time today. I hopped in the Uber and talked to a dude alone. I mean, I'm alone for the first time now in my life in India. And so exciting, scary. It's also just making me realize, like, I remember this in Europe as well, the power of community, the power of friendship, the power of safety. It's pleasure, all of this stuff. Pleasure is like one element of it, but I feel like my whole life I've been thinking you make money for pleasure. You have friends for pleasure. The idea of like it all of these things being necessities never like hit me, which I think is what privilege is. It's never always thinking about these things as if it's some sort of something you can do. Like you can have friends. You don't need friends. You can have a high good paying job. You don't need one. Like these are all things that like are necessities for many people. Like you can't survive unless you have a good 5, 6 friends in a certain place sometimes. You can't survive unless you have any employment that pays you money. Like I guess, but I never really thought about employment as like a necessity. I was like, oh, okay, you work because you want a big house and a big car, but not like, oh, you need it to literally like not die. Um, and so like, yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of interesting thoughts being here on like the purpose of education. It's a very different context here. It's much less, I think, for like self-fulfillment and these things of, reaching some level of self-attainment. And it's a lot more about literally developing the skills to find a job. Like that, it's straight. There's no other, you don't need to do reflection on society. You don't need to do any of that stuff. Um, and when it's so competitive, there's no space like for you to be a good like I mean, maybe if it benefits you in your career, but it's like the type of jobs are also it seems so menial that like your ability to be creative and like blah blah blah, blah is not useful. Like you don't need to be an entrepreneur. Like you need to be a good laborer, and it's like very clear. So like it's unfortunate for the people who go through these education systems and don't get a job because what they learned is so useless when it comes to like leading a fulfilling life that it's like the knowledge you gained is pointless. But it's very useful for those who are able to like then because of their schooling support their family and their grandkids and grandparents and you can pretty much take care of tens of people if you're just an engineer like that's amazing. I mean, really, you can hold it down for tens of people. I can barely hold it down for one, man, myself. 10 other people? That's wild. And so that's the power of education. I mean, that's the power of training here to be able to get employment. But so yeah, so I've been thinking a bit about that. Mm, I watched Avatar 2. That was a good movie. I think I'm gonna be doing these more as well, just because I feel like I literally like once I moved here, I was like, damn, I don't feel lonely, but I'm alone as a motherfucker. Like, damn. Um, it's interesting. It's difficult in a way that I can't rely on talking to strangers as much as I used to. I just don't. I don't have. I don't. I'm not nice like that in Tamil, but I'm okay. I mean, I've been practicing every day. I'm a lot better now than I when I even first got here, and I'm excited to be with my grandpa and Uma. I think I might honestly mess around and stay there for a month. Honestly, I think it'd be lit, and maybe like I'll learn cooking there. So let's see. Let's see. So I'm gonna be here for 2 weeks. Let's see if I can piece it together. If I can figure this food situation out, if I can figure out, all the things I mentioned earlier, if I can figure those things out, I feel really good about myself. Being like, damn, if I could do it here, I can do it in many places. This is good. Like, this is a challenge. Way harder than Italy, way harder than France, way harder than England. I mean, yeah, the level is notched a few. I think in the US it's easy because look, you always have good clean water and you always have like good restrooms. Like you're never worried about that. Like the whole time I was camping, like I was using Starbucks restrooms. Like they're good restrooms. Like you don't have to worry there. you need to have money to enter those establishments, but like you just need to buy like one thing, which could be like $1, $2 if you buy, you know, like lemonade. Like it's just like the infrastructure is just not here. I never. I think one thing that's happened is like in feeling confident about being Indian and all these things in the U.S. I think what I've heard is some narratives that talk like kind of glamorizing what India is like. And I think it's like important to recognize the pros and cons of that. And like while it's not the poorest place in the world, and it's also not, it's like I remember someone was like, do they have airplanes there? Like, of course. It's not at that level, but it's also not the infrastructure for the roads, for the restrooms, for like just the traffic is wild. I mean, it's like I was in an Uber and that dude had the craziest road rage I've ever seen in my life. Like this motorcycle just goes in front of the car and then like slows down for a bit. This guy then in a car follows the guy in the motorcycle for like a cool 1 minute, like right, like literally like right here, and then is just blaring the honking the whole time, and I'm just sitting there like, okay, like I'm in this Uber, I don't really know what to do. And I was thinking, I was like, this is a moment where I'm like, do I just get out of this car because this guy's, I don't know if I trust him, or do I just play the passive role and just sit in the car? Like, I didn't know what to do. I took the passive role and I just sat. And I made it here alive, so nothing happened, but it was just really interesting. I was like, bro, like, why are you so mad? Relax. The dude, it was crazy. And I've had some interesting reflections on like the fascination with like power that I see here a little bit that I just like notice in like small little places. Like prestige seems to be a very valued thing here. Like the ability to appear wealthy. It's interesting. Like super important. Like everything is perception based. It's kind of like Northeast white Americans, like the ones at Georgetown. But it's like everyone here. It's not just like wealthy people. Like I saw like this poster of like this family getting married, and they like they put the poster up in the city like for everyone to see, like, oh, we are marrying this other family, like look at us, everyone, we're marrying them, like as if it was like some public announcement that like isn't needed to be made. What I'm trying to say is not a judgment, but it's an interesting observation of like the cultural differences has been crazy. I don't think I ever recognized how different this place is, but I also think I need to make some friends my age. I need to like actually get out of the house and like be brave and like go to like dance classes. I need to like find things to do here, and we'll ease into it. I don't want to put pressure on myself or be hard. I want to be a soft critic to myself moving forward. And I've been doing a good job and it's been hard, but I don't want to be too critical anymore. Be a little kinder to myself. And so work into it. These are helpful because I feel like if I don't have anyone else to talk to, at the very least I know I'll listen to myself, right? Like I feel like that's something I'm learning right now. Like nobody else I think will really ever care as much as I care about myself. So I feel like you can't expect that level of care. Um, I've just been feeling really unheard by SRK. Um, but yeah, and so I feel like I need to figure out like what it means to be heard. Like what does it mean? What does it feel like? How do I like? What does someone say when I'm trying to think like? I mean, let's just think really quickly. To what point have you ever felt like really heard and seen? The bathroom times when I'd be showering. So there's a few days where like you know SK would be brushing her teeth or getting ready or whatever, and I'd just be like showering, and then we'd like talk. I felt I'm thinking the recent future, but I felt very hurt in seeing those moments. Um, that was nice. But yeah, I think something in my life in general is like this concept of like someone being interested in what I have to say. I think the woman is here, so I'll catch you later. Bye. Love.